Hi students, welcome to our new session of paper discussion, phase 3 and July phase 3, second shift. Okay, so today we are here to discuss the second shift question paper. Already, I hope we have already discussed the first shift question paper also, right? Hope you have gone through that, all those things, right? So, will we start? Yes. So, starting with the first question, more or less the standard of the paper is more or less same as the first shift paper. Some questions are very easy, relatively easy. Few questions are little bit moderate, and one or two questions little bit on the more than moderate. Okay, so here we start. Object moves in a straight line with a constant power. Find the relation between the distance, how it is varying with time. So here we know that whenever the particle is moving with a constant power, it's not a constant force, it's a constant power. Power is constant, right? Then how, when it is moving certain distance, how the distance it is moving is varying with respect to time. So we can start like this. Power is constant. We know that at any instant, that instantaneous power is nothing but force dot velocity, right? That is a constant. We'll take P, which is a constant, right? So force equal to mass into acceleration, velocity is equal to power, right? So here you can write, because they are asking distance versus time, so how we can work out here? Mass into velocity, and A you can write it as acceleration dv by dt is equal to power. V dv is equal to P by m times dt, right? By m times dt. So now you can integrate on both sides. First I am trying to get a relation between V and T. Once I get the relation between V and T, if you integrate that, you will get a relation between the distance and time. Okay, so T is equal to 0, let the velocity be 0. After some time T, it is V. So you can write V square upon 2 is equal to Pt by m, right? After integrating this. So V is equal to, how V is related? Definitely proportional to T power 1 by 2. Velocity of the particle, how it is related to time, T power 1 by 2. So once V is related like this, then how S is related? Definitely you are integrating that, so it will be 3 by 2. Correct or not? Integrating on this. So because when velocity is given as a function of time, how we are getting the displacement as a function of time? You are integrating that. So when you are integrating that, it is nothing but T power 3. Okay, hope it is clear. So distance varying with time. This is simple question. You know the basic concept of the power. Then solve. Instantaneous power, force dot velocity. Correct. So I'm again combining with the kinematics. Fine. We'll proceed to the next one. So here is a question on the rotational dynamics. Rotational kinetic energy is 50% of the translated kinetic energy. Then what is the object? So we know very well that important relation for any rolling object or for any body which is having pure rolling, translated kinetic energy, rotational kinetic energy by translated kinetic energy, that is only your fraction, because here if you write half I omega square by half mv square, and when it is having a pure rolling, you know that V is equal to R omega, right? So that gives you half I omega square by half m into V square is nothing but R square into omega square, because R omega, right? Omega square is getting cancelled. So can I write I by mr square? Simply, whatever the moment of inertia you will get, that fraction, suppose if it is a disk, 1 by 2 mr square by mr square, so it is simply 1 by 2. Right? So exactly Kr by Kt is giving you the fraction which is in front of the moment of inertia. For every rolling object, it is in terms of mr square, like ring 1 mr square, disk 1 by 2 mr square, solid sphere 2 by 5 mr square, and hollow sphere 2 by 3 mr square. Correct? So that fraction is what you are going to get Kr by Kt. And here it is given rotational kinetic energy exactly 50% of the translated kinetic energy. So this is half is equal to I by mr square. That's it. I is equal to r square by 2 So whose moment of inertia is mr square by 2? Either it can be a disk, okay, of inertia, exactly translate, the rotation is 50% of translating energy. What is the object? It can be a disk. Of course, actually it is a solid cylinder also same, right? Disk and solid cylinder both will have 1 by 2 mr square. I don't think so this is a solid cylinder, because the paper what we have framed is actually the memory of the students, right? So we know that for a solid cylinder also moment of inertia is mr square by 2. For a disk also it is mr. Move to the next question. So here particle is executing simple harmonic motion in axis. Okay, so it is covering a distance of x2. When it is at a distance of x1 and x2, its velocities are v1 and v2. Then you need to find the time period. Okay, so the question. So how to solve for this? See, in simple harmonic motion, we know the relation between the velocity of the particle at any particular distance and its distance. So what is that relation? It is p is equal to omega into under root of a square minus x. Correct? So where omega is the angular frequency, a is the amplitude, and x is the displacement of the particle from the mean position. Now here it is given that when it is at a distance of x1 from the mean position, velocity is v1, and x2 from the mean position, the velocity is v2. So two equations you can frame. One is v1, which is equal to omega times under root of a square minus x square. The second equation v2, which is omega times under root of a square minus, here it is x1 square, now it is x2. Right? These two equations you can easily get the value for time period. So first you try to get the value for omega. You can divide these two. If you divide, you will get a relation between the this velocity, I mean v1 and v2, you will get a relation. So if you divide, omega is getting cancelled, you will get the amplitude, and resubstitute for amplitude, you will get the value for omega. Two equations already there, two variables, a is a variable, omega is also a variable. Here also a and omega both are variables. So two equations, two variables, you can solve for omega, and after that you can get the value for time period also, which is equal to 2 pi by omega. It is clear? Right. You can square it on both sides, very easy, and you can eliminate a also. If you want to solve that, v1 square by omega square here is equal to like square by omega square equal to a square minus x square. Similarly, v2 square by omega square, so you are bringing omega over here, right, which is equal to a square minus x2 square, right. If you want, you can subtract these two so that a is getting cancelled and directly get the value for omega. Once you get the value for omega, you can always calculate time period, which is equal to 2 pi by omega. Correct? Fine. This is question which is related to the simple harmonic. We'll proceed to the next one. Okay. Hope you have understood and how you can calculate directly the value of omega. All right. Right. So this is another question on the kinematic, simple kinematics question, and little bit of common sense also you can apply. Okay, you can easily solve. A boy can climb on an escalator at rest at a time t1. So that means actually the boy is standing on an escalator, okay, and escalator is moving, and he can climb that escalator time t1. Actually, escalator is at rest and he is going, okay, like he is moving on steps. Okay, so an escalator can move up with the boy at rest in time t2. Okay, so now when both of them are moving, so actually the question is like this. I'll explain you the question. First, escalator is at rest, boy is moving on the escalator, just climbing the escalator. That time is taking a time t1. Now when he is at rest on the escalator and escalator only is moving up, that time will take a time t2. Now when the boy is also moving and the escalator is also moving, definitely it will take less time. That time how much? Asking. Clear? So first, escalator is at rest, boy is only walking on the escalator. So let us say he is walking with a speed of v1. Okay, so v1. Okay, walking with a speed of v1. That v1 you can write it as the length of the path L by t1 because it's taking a time t1. You can write t1 is equal to L by v1 equation. And now he is at rest on the escalator and escalator is only moving. Let us say escalator is moving with velocity v2, right? So that time you can write v2 equal to L by t2 because it's taking a time t2 when he is at rest on the escalator and escalator is moving. Now, when both of them are moving, the boy is also moving, escalator is also moving, then his velocity will become v1 plus v2. That time your time will become same length L by v1 plus v2. That's all. So because boy speed with respect to escalator and escalator speed, both you have to add because he will go in a quick time. So now what is v1? You can substitute v1 from here, L by t1, and v2 you can substitute from here, L by t2. From this, L gets cancelled, you get t1, t2 by plus t. Right? That is the time what you will take when both of them move together. Boy is also moving, even the escalator is also moving, both of them are moving. Then you take this much time. Okay? Fine? Now, we'll go to the next question. So the box of mass m is accelerated upwards at an incline of 30 degrees inclination. Frictional coefficient between the box and the incline is root of x by 5. Time of ascent, actually is half of the time of descent. So here the question is like this. I'll explain you the question. So there is a inclined plane, rough inclined plane there is. Okay. So you have given some initial velocity log, right? So here they are asking like something like time of ascent and time of descent. So here time of ascent will be less because quickly it will come to rest, and time of descent actually is more. So what happens when it is moving up and when it is moving down? Both the cases take it. So first, let us say here it is moving up. I have given some initial velocity of u. Here to here it went, right, over a distance of s. When it is going up, definitely g sin theta will act down, and along with that, because frictional force is always acting opposite to the direction of relative motion, so even the frictional force is also acting down. So the acceleration will be g sin theta plus 2g cos theta, because already it is slipping. So limiting value of the frictional force, which is equal to nu times normal contact, and normal contact is g cos theta, so nu mg cos theta upon m nu g cos theta. This is the acceleration which is opposite to initial velocity when it is moving up. Clear? Now when it is coming down, see, here it will come to rest and after that it is coming down, right? So initial velocity u, final velocity 0. Now here when it is coming down, you can say that its initial velocity is 0, but it is covering the same distance here to here, right? Now the question is, when it is coming down like this, definitely its acceleration is like this. Only it may come down, or it may be towards also, because g sin theta is like this, already g sin theta like this. What about the frictional force? The frictional force, whenever it is coming down, the frictional force which is acting always opposite to the relative motion, frictional force is upwards and g sin theta is downwards. We have a net acceleration of g sin theta minus g cos theta, correct? It is not just g sin theta, because if it were a smooth surface, then it was having a g sin theta acceleration. Since it is not a smooth surface, it is a rough surface, g sin theta downwards goes upwards. So total net acceleration will be downwards only. Then only it can come down. Correct or not? Okay. Now individually you need to calculate the time from here to here and here to here. Here final velocity 0, here initial velocity 0 and coming down. Then here if you think that the time is t1 and here if you think that the time is t2, definitely this time is less. So t1 is half of t2. Now use kinematics here. So just take this as A1 first case, A2 second case. First case, initial velocity you know, displacement s, so you can like this, s equal to qt plus half at square, or s is same, so it's better you can write v square minus u square is equal to as also. But I want in terms of time, so definitely you can use v is equal to u plus at, or s is same, this you have to get, s is equal to u t1 plus half a1 square. You have to get the value for u, acceleration, that acceleration. There is a relation given between t2. Same yes, here to here with initial velocity 0, it is coming down, right or not? Velocity 0, it is coming down. So you can use s equal to initial velocity 0 half a2 t2 square. Now the question is again the value of u, velocity, some velocity, what you are given. This you can write again in terms of acceleration and time. How you can put it? Because final velocity is 0, v is equal to 0 is equal to u minus a1, right? In place of u, you can write a1 t1. a1 t1 you can write, because you don't want this u. Everything you want is accelerations and times, correct? So equate these two, and in place of u, you can substitute a1 t1. Then use the relation t1 is equal to half t2. Nicely, everything you put it in terms of t1 or everything in terms of t2, then you can get the value for. See my point? Okay. Show you how to solve. U, in place of u, you can write a1 t1 and another t1. So a1 t1 square minus half a1 t1 square is equal to half a2 t2 square. a1 t1 square minus half a1 square, it's half a1 t1 square is equal to half a2 t2 square. Clearly a1 t1 square is equal to a1 t2 relation already there. Substitute that, then you will get the relation between a1 and a2. Substitute that, then you will get the relation for new value. Here, one, right. Question explain, because based on the memory of the students, hopefully we have taken that question. I try to explain the clear question, what it might. It is projected with initial velocity u. So here to here it is taking a time t1. After that again it is coming down. It takes time t2. Relation, this time is less going up because more deceleration. This time is more. So t1 is half of t. What is the value? What is the relation between the gamma and the degrees of freedom? Here is a question. Gamma means adiabatic index, the ratio of Cp and C. Degrees of freedom, small f. So how we can write this? We know that the gamma is nothing but C. What about degrees of freedom, small f? Small f is actually the degrees of. How you can find out the relation between them? What we get? Here we know that the total internal energy of any gas, total internal energy of any gas, all the degrees of freedom, it will be n by 2 FRT, internal energy. change in kinetic theory of gases, all the degrees of freedom, okay, n moles of a gas in all the degrees of freedom, it's n by 2 FRT. So this if you compare with NCVT is equal to n by 2 FRT, clearly CV value FR by 2. Like this only we have calculated the CV values depending on the degrees of. So once you get CV values are FR by 2, then CP value R plus CP. So you can write CV plus R, that gives you FR by 2 plus R, CP value by 2. Done. Now, if you can want to calculate C by CV, CV equal to this is F by 2 plus R and F by 2 cancel by 2 1 by F by 2. This is gamma plus 2 by. Now here is a relation gamma and so you can write 1 plus 2 by F. Standard relation. Right? Quadratic index and the both of them are constant. The freedom is a constant. Gamma value is also a constant. Right? This way you can put it, or if you remember the degrees of freedom and gamma values, so you can substitute in that options also you can. That is this particular question. One, percentage difference in the time period. Gravitation chapter it is. R and 2R. Exactly like this. So, if with the gravitation, actually how to make it? Percentage difference in the time periods they are asking. It is, let us say, two satellites are there. Radius of the orbit of the satellite. The radius of a particular orbit of one satellite is R. The radius of the other orbit of a satellite 1.02 R. Then what is the ratio of the percentage difference in the time periods? Percentage out. So actually percentage difference in the radius of the orbits is, so if this is R, this is 1.02 R, is it not 2% difference? 2% is. Then what will be the percentage difference in the time period? For example, we know that for any satellite moving around a planet, this is a planet, speed v, okay, r, right? So we know very well that some relation is there between the time period and the radius. So what is that relation? T square directly proportional to r cube. Kepler's third law. Correct? Now, clearly you can write r by r dash so you can easily write like directly proportional to r cube. So there is a percentage changes in the time period they are asking, right? So when you want the percentage change in the time period, directly you can write, because t is directly proportional to r power 3 by 2. So if you want a small percentage changes in the time period, so dt by t to 100, this is called as a percentage change in the time period. Since 2%, of course, the small value percentage change, so you can easily write 3 by 2 times, this will come here, dr by r So percentage changes for small values. Whenever y is directly proportional to x power n, the percentage change in y is equal to n times the percentage change in the x when the percentage change is very, very small. Here you can use it. So percentage change in r is nothing but actually it's a 2% change, because r and 1.0 to r, it's actually the r is radius has been increased by 2%. This is 2%. The 2%, definitely time period will become 3 by 2 times 2%. So this will become 3%. Correct? This is 2% total. R and 1.0 to R is 2% change, 2% increase. Since there is a 2% increase in the radius, definitely there is an increase of 3% in the time period of that particular orbit satellite. Here, this is a relation what everybody knows, the time period, the satellite and radius. See, if you observe, actually this time we got a quite good questions. The gravitation chapter, the paper we got almost 2 questions, got paper gravitation. Go to the next one. Concentration decreases to 1 by 16th in 18 days, then what is the half-life? So here at t is equal to 0, let the initial number of nuclei are n naught. Right? After some time is happening to be becoming n naught by 6 left over. Okay, in 80 days. Clearly, in how many half-lives have been completed? Okay, 80 days. So exactly it is becoming, if you observe this, not in n naught by 16. So is it not? In one half-life it will become n naught by 2. Second half-life it is becoming n naught by 4. Another half-life it is becoming that half, correct? 8. How many half-lives? 1 half-life, 2 half-life, 3 half-life and 4 half-lives. It's a matter of 4 half-lives. So 4 half-lives is nothing but 80 days. So 1 half-life is nothing but 20 days. Right or not? 20 days. Simple, straight away you can tell. Need to apply any form. Or else, so the other one is like after n half, you know one formula, after n half-lives it is going to become n naught by 2 power n, correct? That is equal to n naught by 16, where n is the number of half-lives. Nicely you can put what is n? N is equal to 4. That means 4 half-lives is 80 days. 1 half-life will become 20 days. Okay. Next. So here they are asking to determine the equivalent resistance between A and B. Equivalent resistance, what they are asking. There are some different resistors as the 12 and 6, 4 and 4. Actually, if you observe, so this is all a conducting wire. Whenever you have a conducting wire like this, these two can make it parallel. Or not. This, if you want, you can assume also C means this also. Right? You can redraw this if you want. This is A, this is B, this is D, and B. Between A and C, 12 and 6, both of them are in parallel. These are in parallel. And between C and D, 4 and 4, of course, they are again in parallel. And between D and B, 6 and 12, they are also in parallel. 6 and 12. 12 and 6. What they are asking in A and B. Right? So when 12 and 6 ohms are in parallel, so first equivalent of these two, R1 R2 by R1 plus R2, 12 into 6 by 12 plus 6, is it not 4? These two will become 4. 12 into 6 by 12 plus 6 by 18. 4. And 4 and 4 parallel will become 2. This again will become only. Now this 4 and 2 and 4, they are in series. Get 10 ohms. Okay. 10 ohms. The R equivalent between A and B. Okay. Fine. Next. So there is a question, what is a true dip angle. If the apparent dip is 45 degrees and angle with the meridian is 30 degrees. So exactly, I'll explain you the question also first clearly. See, generally the angle of dip you have to measure in magnetic meridian, which is in a vertical plane. Some vertical plane, a magnetic meridian is there. In that meridian only, if you measure the angle of dip, then you will get the correct value. Correct? Okay. So, but if you will not put the compass, the magnetic meridian, other plane if you put, other vertical plane if you put, suppose this is a magnetic meridian and you are putting in some other plane like this, the compass, definitely it won't show the correct dip angle, it will show apparent dip. Okay. So I will draw first magnetic meridian. Vertical plane, you are placing a compass like this, magnetic meridian. This is the magnetic meridian. This is a magnetic meridian. Vertical component BV, horizontal component BH. This is the exact earth magnetic field BE, which will make an angle phi. This is a true dip, where phi is called as angle of dip. True angle of dip, which we have to calculate. But since you are measuring in some other plane, which is making an angle of 30 degrees with the magnetic meridian, so which is making an angle of 30 degrees with the magnetic meridian, then even in that plane also, vertical component will not change, but horizontal component, instead of taking like this, you will have a horizontal component like this, another horizontal component, which is equal to, this is BH, so this value will become BH into cos theta, where theta is the angle between this magnetic meridian and the other plane, which may be like this. Okay, so some other plane, if I take some other plane, then horizontal component is not BH, rather it is BH into cos theta, where theta is the, because you are taking a component of horizontal. For this again you are taking one more component, which is BH cos theta, where theta is the angle between this plane and this plane. This is a different plane, right? And vertical component will be same BV. So now you will be getting resultant of these two some other value, because this is becoming less. So obviously resultant will move that side. So this is phi dash. So this is phi dash, which is equal to apparent dip. Right? Now, they have given apparent dip which is equal to 45 degrees and they are asking phi value. Theta value they have given. So it's very simple now. So what is tan phi here? Tan phi, from the basics I am trying to explain you what is the exact meaning of that true dip and apparent dip, because you don't know which is exactly the magnetic meridian. That is why you can keep a compass in the vertical plane, whatever you are getting is the apparent dip. Okay, so first this is tan phi, which is equal to BV by BH, and here I can write tan of phi dash is equal to BV same, but BH will change because you will get a component of the horizontal. So BH cos theta. Divide these two. So tan phi upon tan of phi dash is equal to BV by BH cancel. So cos of theta. Tan phi is equal to cos theta into tan of phi dash. The relation. The true dip, the angle between the two meridians, the apparent dip. Apparent dip already they have given us 40 degrees, tan of 45 1 cos theta is 30. So this you get root 3 by 2 phi is a phi value, which is a true dip, that is equal to tan inverse of root 3 by 2. The answer for that. Very good question. The earth magnetism. Okay, so that is a chapter. That chapter we have got question. All right. Right. We'll move on to the next one. So there is a LCR circuit where resistance is given, inductance is also given, capacitance is also given, the voltage of the AC circuit is also given, and they are asking us to find the resonant frequency. So here they may be asking the resonant frequency. Okay, so that we need to find. So what is that resonance frequency for omega? You know, when XL equal to, so omega L is equal to 1 by omega C. Right? So because the circuit is not mentioned over here, they are asking us to find the resonant frequency. You can get it like this: L equal to XC, omega L, 1 by omega C. The value L and C values are already there. Okay, so that is one thing. Or if it is already at resonance, then we can also expect the question like this: that is the power supplied in this particular circuit. Power. That power is given by Vrms to Irms into cos phi. And phi is nothing but the, cos phi is nothing but the power factor. That is the power factor. Vrms into Irms into cos phi. Suppose if it is at resonance, if it is really at resonance, then you know that phi value is 0, so cos phi value will become 1. That time you will get the power Vrms into Irms. So that time, because since it is at resonance, you may expect like this. So this will be the current, and total voltage and current both will be in the same phase. So cos phi value will become 1. When it is 1, so directly Vrms into Irms. Vrms is 220 volts. Irms you can write it as Vrms 220, and Irms you can write it as Vrms by R. Because it is at resonance, R is 100, you will get Irms. Both if you multiply, you get the, because at resonance, power factor is 1. Voltage and current both will be in the same phase. Correct? That might be the question. One. Right. The next one. This question is actually on the photoelectric effect. I will explain you the question, because memory of the students, they try to take this question, and based on that thought of the question. See, it's a question on photoelectric effect. When the light is having some incident wavelength of lambda, light which is incident on the photoelectric plate having a wavelength of lambda, then stopping potential, in that case it is 2V. And if wavelength lambda is another value, if because when you increase the wavelength, energy of the photons will decrease, so stopping potential also. So here the stopping potential has increased, so wavelength has to decrease. Correct? Maybe like this. Then what is the threshold wavelength they are asking? Threshold wavelength. So maybe like this. So it may be lambda by 2. Lambda decrease, so voltage has increased. Cannot be like this. So sometimes it can be this is 2 lambda and this is lambda also. I am trying to explain you the question. Because wavelength is decreased, stopping potential increases. When wavelength decreases, only stopping potential will increase. Clearly the stopping potential has increased. Maybe wavelength might have decreased. Correct? So here I can write C by lambda incident photon energy is equal to work function plus stopping potential plus K max. K max equal to stopping potential. Right? Into 2V you can. And when the wavelength is becoming lambda by 2 by lambda by 2, so that time you can write work function plus stopping potential into 3V. From these two, you can divide these two, I think, you get the work function. in electron volts, you will get the work function in electron volts. Once you get the work function in electron volts, you can get the threshold wavelength also. Because work function is equal to exactly whatever the wavelength that is required. What is threshold wavelength? The maximum wavelength which is required so that the photoelectric emission takes place. Work function is equal to hc by. These two equations, you can divide these two. Okay, you will get is equal to 5 plus 2 electron volts 5 plus 3 electron. So you will get the 5 value. 5, 6, get the 5 value. After substituting the 5 value over here, you will get the lambda naught. This can be the question. Or else it can be like this. This can be lambda and this can be 2 lambda and this can be lambda also. Just we expected question may be like this, and accordingly we are trying to solve. So here you will get the positive value, getting negative. Solving up the question like this, or take simply lambda 1 and lambda 2, get the lambda naught, because I don't know exactly what those values. These question. All right. So here is another question. Two mercury drops of radius r. Each of them are having radius r. They are combined to form a single. Then what is the ratio of the not total surface area, the surface energy, right? So I will explain you the question again. So there are two drops, identical drops, each are having radius. Let's say I'll take smaller here, capital. These two are combining to form a bigger drop. Radius is capital. Then not total surface area, nobody will ask total. Rather they are asking the surface energy. Right? The surface energy before and so before its surface energy, this is having U1 and this is also having U1 surface energy. And after it is having some U2. Okay? So surface energy. We know that surface energy for any drop is directly proportional to its surface area. So it's equal to surface area into surface tension. Right? So before and after, so they are asking, before and after means maybe they are asking U1 by U2. What is U1? This is area 4 pi r square into surface tension, which is called as C. Surface energy is equal to surface area into surface tension. Right. Final, you can write 4 pi capital R square into C. So that is nothing but small r square by capital R square. And how to get the relation between small r and capital R? You know, two drops. So by equating the volumes, 2 times 4 by 3 pi small r cube is equal to 4 by 3 pi capital R cube. You are getting a relation like capital R cube is equal to 2 small r cube. This relation, use it here. So small r by capital R whole power 2. What is small r by capital R? So by r cube by capital R cube, you know that is 1 by 2. So small r by capital R is 1 by cube root of 2. So it will be whole power 1 by 10 whole square. So that gives you 1 by 2 power 2 by capital. Same will be the relation initial surface energy and final surface energy. Before combining, what was the surface energy, and after combining, what is the surface energy? Yeah. So this is a question on the surface tension. On to the next one. So here they are asking us to determine the total work done in this isothermal process. This is an isothermal process. So in an isothermal process, whatever the work done is nothing but nRT ln V2 by V1. We know this. And nRT you can write it as either P1 V1 or P2 V2. Right? Here I am writing P1 V1 means 400 into 2, 800, or P2 V2 also 800. Right? nRT is P1 V1 or P2 V2. Equal to, I am writing P1 V1 ln V2 by V1 direct. P1 V1, P1 is 400, P1 is 2, so 800 ln V2 by V1, 4 by 2. So the work done. That formula, nRT ln V2 by V1 is a formula direct, right? Next. Okay. I think these are the questions what we found out. This particular shift of 20th July. Right? So we'll come with more questions of the other papers also. 2nd July to conduct. That also will session. Maximum we are trying to take the questions the students are giving us, right? We are framing that what can be the question, proper question, and we are trying to solve it. So here the idea is paper discussion, idea of paper discussion for the benefit of the students. So it can definitely help the students for their session 4, phase 4, right? Which will be in the August month. That is the main motive of discussing the. Thank you very much. So we'll meet again. Thank you.